There are 0 Twitter followers, 0 Facebook likes, 0 everything. This is absolutely brand new. Are you going to try out Luna, a new free, I think, DAW from UA? Do you think there is a reason we don't see any electronic musicians busking? How does one submit a track to your record label, and what genres are you looking for? Will your label focus on digital releases first, such as streaming platforms with a push to playlist exposure, or going the physical release first, then digital a few weeks later? How are you planning to find time to run the record label on your own as well as everything else you do? We will not be doing singles or remixes. What level of service do you think record labels nowadays should need to or should provide for artists? For example, marketing, mixing, mastering, online presence, etc. What do you think labels need to do in terms of finding a market or a niche, or maybe even creating a market for themselves? Is that even viable? Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It is Friday. It's time for another Ask Me Anything. Usual rules apply. Comment anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Before I look at last week's video, there is definitely stuff I need to cover in house admin. First of all, this is episode 100. My 100th AMA just seems insane. So yeah, first of all, huge thank you to everyone that has watched, well, any of these videos really. There's been many hours of me ranting about all sorts of stuff. So thank you for your patience, I suppose. But honestly, seriously, huge thanks to everyone who's supported these videos along the way. Obviously, an extra big thanks to any Patreon supporters as well. Yeah, it's not something I expected to do 100 episodes of. If I remember rightly, episode 1 was just me saying, ask me anything. It was literally just a bit of an experiment. I thought, let's just see where it goes, and it definitely wasn't supposed to be a weekly thing, or it wasn't planned to be a weekly thing. I think I've posted the first one and just came back a few days later because there were loads of questions, and then I thought maybe the second or third one, I thought, hang on, this is getting a bit out of hand. Let's just do it as a weekly thing, I think. But yeah, who knows? That was 100 episodes ago. So yeah, welcome to episode 100. I had wanted to do something a bit more special. For those of you that don't watch or listen to these in real time, it is the something of May, 17th of May, April even, 2020. And in fact, me not knowing the date says everything you need to know about the date. We're all in quarantine. None of us have left the house for I don't know how many weeks now. It feels like day 1 million. Yeah. So because of that, I have not been able to do what I wanted to do, which was to meet up in a venue somewhere. I was kind of thinking like a cafe or pub and just get the place and get 20, 30 of us to meet up and do a face-to-face AMA, or don't know. There were lots of ideas I had that never came to fruition because we're not allowed out of the house. So there we go. That's that. So I think most of you have gathered by now that I've been dropping clues all week, and really for several weeks, that I am now officially announcing right here, right now, exclusively first viewing of my new record label or concept label, 5302. Yes, so you'll have seen me posting and changing profile images and things. Some of you, again, may not be watching these in total real time, And in which case you'll have noticed things like my Spotify playlist has just changed its name by the time this video goes out to 5302 Electronica, which kind of makes a bit more sense and it all ties in. So there we go. I have now set up the concept label and the website is 5302.co.uk. Yeah, so I'm going to answer all these questions, and I led on last week that this was what this episode was going to be focusing on. So I know there are questions that you guys have already asked up front. I'm not sure what all the questions are. I haven't looked at them in advance, so I don't want to be repeating myself too much, he says. But essentially, if I just give you a rough idea, the record label is kind of born out of both frustration, boredom, and curiosity, I suppose. A lot of it has come from these AMAs where people over the last couple of years have been asking about, what should a record label be differently? What are the pros and cons of particular record labels? What do you think of this record label or this whatever? And a lot of it sort of built up where I've thought, if I was to start a record label in the year 2020, I feel like things should be a little bit different. I would personally go this way and do this and that and focus on this and that. And so that's kind of how it's all come about. At the same time of me being somewhat, I'll be honest, bored and frustrated with a lot of other labels out there releasing generic bangers, and I think that's fine for a certain type of person, but I'm not that certain type of person, and I'm pretty sure most of you long-time viewers will agree. It's not really my thing to just do bangers, and yeah, so there we go. That's kind of where it's at. So musically, I've really struggled to place all of this because where in my head I've thought to myself, right, well, it's going to be like this song or whatever. And obviously I've been working on a lot of my own music for it. But of course, nobody's directly asked me, well, what genre are you doing? And then when it's come to putting together things like websites, press releases, whatever, all the forthcoming stuff, clearly I need to sort of give a rough explanation of what it is musically. And the best I can come up with at the minute is essentially electronica, which is a bit kind of vague. And then I guess drawing lines with the sort of questioning your place in the universe subgenre of sci-fi, if there was such a thing. So I think that's one of the reasons why I've now changed the name of what was Tonal Display Spotify playlist to 5302 Electronica playlist, because actually, and that's one of the other factors in all of this, is curating that playlist. A lot of people have sort of continually questioned me on, well, where are you getting this music from? What genre is this music, and where can I get more? And a lot of my responses have been, I don't know, because it kind of, there are tracks out there and artists out there doing this stuff, but there's not really enough for it to have a name or anything there. So I kind of felt like, well, maybe that's my role, is to fill that gap. So yeah, hopefully that helps everyone understand where I'm kind of coming from, and then I'll get into more of where it's going to at some point in a moment. So there's a few things I'm trying to do different. We'll see how it goes. Let's have a look, and for the astute of you, you'll have seen it on the screen there, 5302. By the way, you are welcome to pronounce it 5302, 5302, 5302, 5302. Pronounce it how you want. I could not care less. The numbers do have some meaning. You might find out one day, who knows. There we go. So let's have a look at last week's questions and see what we've got. Hopefully most of these are label related, and hopefully most of these will answer any questions that you may have brewed up in the last 7 minutes of me waffling. Not Your Human. 100 AMAs. I've got a lot of time on my hands. You're telling me. These series are super fun, and I get to see many more from you. And I hope I get to see many more from you in the future. My question is, are you going to try out Luna, a new free, I think, DAW from UA? I assume that's Universal Audio. Also, if maybe I could share my sample pack on the Facebook group for free if you allow it, kind of a mini celebration from me. So question number 1, no, I probably won't try Luna. I'll be honest, I love the Universal UAD2 plugins. They're incredible. I really like the Apollo audio interface, sound card, whatever you want to call it. But I always kind of struggled with the prices and the business model side of stuff with the UAD stuff. I mean, they were charging astronomical figures for their plugins. And I get that, you know, it was focused at commercial studios who had that sort of a budget. But I think what particularly annoyed me was they'd do things like Black Friday sales, and, you know, it'd be get $5 off this $10,000 plugin, and it just wasn't a good deal. First of all, I'm not in the business of looking for a new DAW at the minute. I love Bitwig and I love Harrison Mixbus 32C as well, and those are my two go-to DAWs for Bitwig for creating, writing, producing, experimenting, sound design, just everything. Mixbus 32 for mixdown, mastering, engineering stuff. Those are my two go-tos. I see no reason to try any other unless somebody comes up to me and slaps me in the face and says, you need this in your life for this reason. So there we go. That's my view on that. As for sharing a sample pack on the Facebook group, yeah, go on, go for it. I sort of have a rule in the Facebook group of no spamming and no self-promotion if it's only self-promotion. But as far as I'm concerned, if you are, and I think I've kind of written this into the rules, essentially the way I view it with the Facebook group is, if you're one of the people that regularly comments, likes, interacts, talks, shares, whatever with others in the group, I have no problem whatsoever with you saying, hey guys, my new track's out, check it out, or whatever. It's maybe some sort of a couple of sentences on whatever, but there have been a few people that have got kicked out the group because they sign up and 2 minutes later I can see they've posted a spam post of a out now banger type thing, and that's not helping the group. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, if you're involved in the group, then share away. Andrew Hollis, 100 episodes, crazy, high five. Label related question. Will your label focus on digital releases first, such as streaming platforms with a push to playlist exposure, or going the physical release first, then digital a few weeks later? Good question. So I guess the other thing I can announce, which I don't think I covered in House Admin, and I think most of you will have worked out by now, if you haven't already just paused this video and jumped onto the website and had a look around, I decided to put my money where my mouth is and launch the label with my own album. So with that, there are a few things coming up. I am looking into physical release for that, which is going to be hugely expensive. So we'll see. It's not for a long way away yet. So anyone, before you get too excited, we're looking at launch in September for that. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm testing the water, really. I think physical sales are kind of a weird one these days. I think if you're already an established brand with an established following, and you know that your customers want certain products, or you know that you get certain sales, then I think you can kind of venture into physical sales and know what to expect. However, at the minute, 5302 Recordings has 0 fans, 0 customers, 0 sales. And I think that's important to point out, because there is no Spotify page, there is no Spotify music, which again is why I have the playlist, because it's kind of giving you a rough idea of where we're heading. So if I was to press up 1,000 vinyl today for my album, you know, how do I work out how many are going to be sold? There's no track record to work it out. So, you know, if I got, I forgot what I just said, was it 1,000 vinyl? You know, you're looking at between, well, probably about $5,000, $6,000 in cost. You know, that's a huge outlay for what may account to 0 sales. And I don't believe, I could be wrong here, please tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I don't believe that fans of Dom Caine or my music, I don't believe that fans of my music are the type that would buy much on vinyl. I think there are, I think some of my fans would buy a piece of memorabilia and a vinyl for that reason, but I don't think my music is the type, certainly for the album, I don't think none of those are the types you're going to play in a nightclub, so it's that kind of rules out DJ sets. And I think some of you viewers of these videos probably have a record deck at home. I hope a few of you have a record deck and a nice tube amp and, you know, a really nice fancy setup. But I'd be surprised if it was more than 10 of you that were willing to then spend money on a vinyl album. So it's kind of difficult to judge. However, I'm going to probably test the water and see where we go. I am looking at, and I'm in talks with a company at the minute about getting some CDs and some slightly different things, so USB stick type stuff with a slight twist. So we'll see, is what I'm saying. I think the primary focus of this label is going to really be on digital streaming, not sales. So, and I've let on to this over the past few months as well, where, you know, in my view, the label is not about club bangers, it's not about DJs, it's about cinematic melodies and the listening experience, which may translate into a venue, but it's not about, you know, I wouldn't expect support from Richie Hawtin, David Guetta, Jazzy Jeff. You know, none of those people are going to be interested. They might listen to it at home, but they're not going to be playing it in their DJ sets. So I'm not interested in that area. So from my view, the focus is things like Spotify playlisting, YouTube. You know, like I say, the year is 2020. I'm not interested in online stores. I'm not necessarily interested in things like, I'm more interested in Apple Music than I am in iTunes. I guess that's probably the best way of saying it without slagging off a company, because they're both the same company. So there we go. Hopefully that helps. And I see you've got a music-related question. When programming drums, do you program in the editor arrange window, or do you sketch out on machine, etc., and then import? Would you recommend using a drum sequencer? So I used to use Nerve loads. Oh, in fact, in everything I used to use Nerve. Since moving to Bitwig, I've not really bothered with Nerve. I loved Nerve for the fact that it was more than just a sequencer, and I think that was kind of the point, was that you could manipulate the waveforms within each pad. and that kind of made sense. Native Instruments Machine, I had version 1 and version 2, and I never really got on with it, and I didn't bother updating beyond that, just because I felt like the plug-in menu system was like a whole new workstation of it within its own right, and it wasn't intuitive or creative for me. I couldn't just dial stuff up and start experimenting. It all seemed like a very slow, methodical process to get your 16 pads laid up. I assume that's all changed now, but because of that, it kind of put me off. And this is one of the problems, I think, a bit of a pro tip for everyone here. Sometimes being an early adopter is not a good thing, because if you take on beta versions of stuff or early versions of stuff, you can quite often just see all the flaws and you end up going, forget it, and move on to something else. And then years later, you come back to it and go, wow, it's completely different. And you sort of regret throwing it away in the first place. And I kind of feel like I probably did that with Native Instruments Machine. I kind of dabbled with it as best as I could. I used it for a few live shows and just went, this is too much hard work. It's not intuitive enough. Whereas chances are, because you couldn't, for example, if I remember rightly, you couldn't drag and drop in the first iteration. Whereas I don't even need to look at it now. I can guarantee you can drag and drop. So when it comes to recommending a drum sequencer, it depends on your reasoning, I suppose. If you're doing something for a live show so you can pre-build banks and you want that tangible hands-on experience, absolutely use a drum sequencer. Otherwise, it depends on your workstation, but for me, Bitwig, the Bitwig samplers are just immense. The things you can do in there are incredible. So one of the reasons I fell in love with Xfer Nerve in the first place was the fact that you could just there was things like distortion and whatever built into every pad, and you could change the waveform to a saw wave or whatever of a sample would make it more saw. To me, that was incredible. With Bitwig, everything's inherently like that anyway, so I have no reason to venture out beyond Bitwig's own drum rack, which by default uses Bitwig samplers in every pad. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Hope you and loved ones are keeping safe, and here's to another 100. We are, and yes, thank you very much. Nathan Zaskarinskis, Crazy Dom, high five. Can't believe it's got to 100. Well done. Thanks for asking, answering my many questions along the way. You're welcome. I've got a question. I think it's come about due to this lockdown and me going slightly insane from being locked up for so long. Do you think there is a reason we don't see any electronic musicians busking? Well, I mean, fundamentally, the reason is probably because we don't really get battery-powered electronic instruments. But also, on top of that, we don't really get many live electronic musicians solo. You get duos and you get bands, but if you look at duos, whether it be is Bicep a duo? I think Chemical Brothers, Daft Punk, whoever, they've Orbital. They've got racks of synths and racks of sequencers, and it's all hugely complicated stage setup. But lower level acts, they don't really exist that much. Solo electronic artists. This may sound silly, but can you name one? Off the top of my head right now, I can't name one. Not one that plays actual instruments live. I know they are out there because I've seen them in my Facebook feed and whatever, but they're not people I have on my radar. I mean, I guess, you got people like Stefan Bodzin. He plays an instrument live. But again, he's had to have that custom mixer built for him, or controller built for him to be able to do that. I see a lot of people with the MPC 40s and stuff, which, that works. But they're not really playing instruments on top. So I think if you were busking with an MPC 40 and a laptop, first of all, people are probably going to see your £2,000 laptop and go, you don't need money, because that's how people see things. Second of all, you're going to need to have that powered up or charged up or whatever, and how much battery usage are you going to get out on a street? Probably not too much, especially when you then need amp and speakers and everything else to go with it. I know you get the odd person who has like an electric guitar, but that's just a guitar which uses like a volt, and then the amp cab, which tends to, you can get battery powered ones anyway. So I think there's a whole host of reasons. I think if somebody was fortunate enough to be a solo artist, electronic musician, then you probably already afford a fair amount of equipment to be able to achieve that. And aside from that, you wouldn't want that expensive equipment out in the streets. And then there's the case of electrics, and so I think there's a whole host of reasons there. And none of them are impossible. There's not any fundamental reason that you wouldn't have electronic music buskers. But the other thing then, I think the biggest thing is, if you look at even someone like Stefan Bodzin, nobody really knows quite what he's doing. You can kind of work out, you can watch his shows on video, and I think if you're in the audience, you don't really have a clue what he's doing. If you're backstage or watching it on video, you can see and work out roughly, right, well, that's a filter, right, well, that's a beat repeater, right, well, that's a trigger for X, Y, and Z. You can kind of work out what he's doing, and clearly you can see his hand playing notes on a keyboard. That bit's obvious. But unless you're playing that instrument, then really you're just pressing buttons and nobody really knows. And that's for a club full of electronic music fans. If you translate that to a busker in the street, 99% of people walking past a busker in the street don't know anything about electronic music. They're not die-hard fans. They're definitely not music producers, as much as we feel like everyone's a producer these days. 99% of the people walking down the street are not music producers, and they're not going to go, oh wow, he's got an MPC 40, therefore he must be triggering Ableton clips in a Ranger View or whatever. That's not how you're going to view it. So I think most people, the vast majority of people, would just be completely unappreciative of an electronic busker unless they're playing an instrument with their hands, like a keyboard, synthesizer, whatever, a guitar. Then I think there's not much that people would appreciate from a distance, I guess. So I don't know if it would be particularly successful. I think look, they're not particularly successful in that. It's probably the same question as we're all asking, why are there not loads, why are there so many DJs and a minuscule fraction of them actually play some sort of live instrument programmer sequencer type thing? The closest we get to it is maybe an NI machine or an MPC 40 or some sort of trigger pad or something. Everyone is still, hell-bent on just playing other people's music on CD or USB or whatever. So I think, until our nightclubs are all full of electronic musicians doing their own thing, then I think our streets will be pretty empty of them as well. So yeah, maybe someone watching this will be the first. Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, next question. In fact, before I go on to the next question, I can see my camera's about to reset, so I'll get there before it. And I'm back. Right. I've seen guys with electric guitars and amps, so they can power stuff. Yeah, so like I said, the amps are you know, a 12-volt battery will suffice. How hard would it be to go out with my Octatrack and do an hour on a street corner for some change? Well, it wouldn't be that difficult, and I suppose something like an Octatrack you can do, but are people going to know what you're doing? Are people going to appreciate it? Are people going to enjoy it? I've no idea. I think even though electronic music is all around us everywhere, a lot of it, I hate to say this, but a lot of electronic music out there today in the streets, the shops, whatever, it's just filler. It's just fodder. It's just background noise. You know, there are very few people who would walk into a clothes shop, hear a dance track and go, oh, I really like the melody on this. You know, they might go, it's catchy, but that's about it. So I guess we're a long way from electronic musicians being appreciated as an actual skill, as an actual, you know, for people to recognise a drum machine to be an actual instrument, for example. I think we're still a long way from the general public with having that perspective, I think. I could be wrong. Maybe things have changed, but that's how I feel the general public are. I don't know. I still feel like we're all pretty much in a very niche market still. So yeah, there we go. Cavalcade. Cheers, Dom. Crazy. High five. Thanks for the good wishes. My wife and I are feeling loads better. Good. Loved the 5G rant. You got a virtual standing ovation for that one. Here's to another 100 AMA vlogs at least. Okay, record label questions, eh? Right then, here are mine. How are you planning to find time to run the record label on your own as well as everything else you do? Good question, and I'm not. At the moment, I have a few people working with me on certain aspects. In terms of visual art, I can tell you that's nothing to do with me, as other than I say, oh, I like that, or no, I don't like that. It's not my forte, never has been. So at the moment, I'm working with, in fact, a lot of you viewers will know the name Deadly Custard from these videos. In fact, I can see he's got a comic coming up. He is doing a lot of the artwork and helping me out there. There are also other people covering some of the background work in terms of just me bouncing ideas off at the minute. I wouldn't say they're fully on board as part of a team, but I am kind of relying on advice and whatever from people with more experience in different sectors for different parts of it. So there is that. At the minute, I'm too much of a control freak to let people on board, but the plan is, once I've got everything in place, and there is a lot to get in place to do it properly, the plan is that I'll then have a few other people join me, and will potentially employ one or two people to help out as well. So we shall see where that goes. However, this was kind of part of the process that came up, and one of the things that kind of made me want to do this was the fact that in this day and age, you shouldn't need to be doing crazy amounts of admin or whatever when it comes to things like sorting out royalties, because, you know, gone are the days where you get royalties from this bit, royalties from that bit, and you have to start chucking in different figures and different currency conversions and things like that into different areas. And you know, I think if you get a good distributor, pretty much all of that is done for you. So things like royalty distribution should be part of your your music distribution system, and if it's all integrated, then it becomes kind of self-managing. You've just got to oversee it. In terms of A&R, there will be a couple of other heads that I have on board that will be sort of helping filter out some of it for me. So I'm not entirely on my own, but we'll see where it goes, I suppose. So I guess that answers that. What's taken up most of your time so far? I guess getting the website to a state that it's in now. Check out 5302.co.uk. I've had a company get everything in position for me, but it's been kind of tricky because while I've been talking to a couple of artists, the artists that you can see on the roster are all in and agreed, and that's all fine, and setting up releases looking into next year, it's kind of difficult to put together all of these things without the content to put in place, but I think it's getting there. And please do, anyone and everyone, hit the contact page on that website. There is a mailing list sign up. So if you're looking to get updates on things like news, reviews, possibly events coming up, then sign up. What's been the biggest surprise or difficulty so far? I don't think I've had any surprises because I think it's just too early to have surprises at this point, thankfully. The biggest difficulty, I don't think it's been drastically difficult. I guess it's just the fiddly bits, like integrating certain systems into others. But again, these are the things that I've talked about in the past, where if you get it right from the beginning, it's much like where I've talked about building a workstation, where if you compare, for example, in my view, the difference between Ableton and Bitwig, or Ableton 9, I should say, and Bitwig. Ableton 9 was kind of they started with Ableton 1 and then they went, we'll add this feature, we'll do this and we'll slap this on, and there's a security problem, and this doesn't work properly, there's a bug fix, and it all got patched on to version 9. I think version 10 they started from scratch again, which is why it took so long. Whereas Bitwig was 10 years further down the line going, hey, everything's different now, let's build a brand new workstation from start and we'll just see where it goes. Knowing that all these things were available, these new technologies. I think one of the difficulties of setting up this label is knowing that there are all these new processes and technologies in place, and getting them all to work with each other is a bit tricky, but I'm making sure that everything's sort of seamlessly integrated, basically all the processes, all the release strategies, marketing plans, everything needs to work together for it to be a successful release, I think. So I think that's probably the biggest difficulty so far is just getting everything to work together, which is easier said than done. But again, we've got quite a bit of time until the first release still. So there we go. How will we stand out from the crowd? First and foremost, and I guess every record label says this, but first and foremost, I think musically we'll stand out because, like I say, we're not focusing on club hits or bangers, or not even necessarily radio play in terms of normal consumer radio. But the biggest way that I think we're looking to stand out is in the background, weirdly. I've also got a very small team of people working with me who are going to be pushing for the music to be synchronized to TV and film. So it's not just a normal record label that releases a track on Beatport and then goes, there we go, that's that, next one next week, you know. Each and every release has some careful thought and consideration put behind it. In fact, so much so that my plan is to have a visual artist work on a piece of art for every release. So every release comes with a piece of art that should be available on print, canvas, metal, sculpture, I don't know, whatever it is. There's a piece of art that should be then available that ties in with the music. So I think there's a few ways that it sort of is slightly different to your average label. So I think that's that. All the best and keep well. Thank you very much. Deadly Custard, the aforementioned 100 today, crazy, high five. I believe you can get a card from the Queen now. Hey Dom, what are your initial and future plans for the label? So initially, I think I've kind of covered that now. So we're looking at launch with my album in September, and then it'll be a couple of months later. We'll go into. I'm hoping monthly releases is kind of where we're aiming. Future plans, there are lots. Not many I can talk about at this point. So, I mean, I've sort of touched on the fact that I'm looking to push the music in TV film sector as well. I think that's hugely important for these two things to merge. But I want there to be more than just music. I want there to be visual art with it, which is why each release gets a visual piece created for it. And I think, you know, further down the line, I can't really be looking at these things just yet, but I think once we've built up a decent catalogue, I think, you know, in my view, it'd be nice to put on some, whether it be art gallery events or something along those lines, you know, small intimate events, basically. I would like a small roster of artists. I don't want to be signing just singles from headline acts or bangers or whatever. I want it to be regular releases from the same artists, from a small roster of artists. And one of the reasons for that is because I'd like to be able to put on events and have these artists perform live. So there's a lot in there. Oh, the other thing to mention as well is we will not be doing singles or remixes. No singles, no remixes, only EPs and albums. I think that's probably another way to stand out, and it's kind of going against the grain of everyone else at the minute. So there we go. Just because I think singles and remixes are thrown together without any real care and attention. So there we go. Barely Awake. Hey Dom, AMA 100. That's crazy. High five. Congratulations. Okay, I'll bite. 1. What level of service do you think record labels nowadays should need to or should provide for artists? For example, marketing, mixing, mastering, online presence, etc. Now, that's a really good question. And if I'm totally honest, in terms of record labels should provide, none of it. Absolutely none of it. I don't think it should ever be relied on, but it should always be a benefit, I think. I think every label should market their own releases. If they don't, then they're just idiots. You know, that's like a promoter booking some DJs and just expecting the DJs to all do the promotions of that event, which we know happens. I'm looking at you promoters, local independent promoters. Mixing and mastering, I think, again, a label could help with these things. And online presence, again, it would be nice for a label to be supportive of their artists. Now, I'm going to answer it as a record label, as 5302. Marketing will absolutely market the releases in any way, shape or form that we can. It's in our interests to do that. Mixing and mastering, 100% we'll be offering that for our artists, because we want the music to be the best it can be. We want the potential to be hit. Online presence, again, I've mentioned, I want it to be a small roster, and one of the reasons for that is because I want those artists to be supporting each other to an extent, at least, and that's why I want it to be. That's one of the reasons why I'm not sort of tying down to one specific niche genre, although I kind of am. But that one specific niche genre happens to be quite an open-minded one. So I think, look, I mean, you can see the roster on the website that's been launched today. You can see there is Ash, there is Deadly Custard, there is myself, and there is Jakku. And I think all four of us have sort of talked individually so far, but all four of us know each other outside of this as well. So it's something where I think online presence is something that's quite important. I think it's a case of record labels shouldn't have to do all of these things. But I think if you want to be a successful record label, I think you need to do these things, and you need to be quite careful in how you do it as well. One of the reasons I've set up this label is because previous labels that I've worked with and for, they'll release a track or whatever, and then 2 days later it's like it never happened. It's gone. It's out there, but it's not getting. There's no real marketing or anything put towards it, and I'd say the vast majority of labels I've released music on just sign up new artists left, right, and centre, and I don't think that works to their favour necessarily. Well, okay, it works to the label's favour, but it doesn't work to the artist's favour whatsoever. So there we go. Number 2. What do you think labels need to do in terms of finding a market or a niche, or maybe even creating a market for themselves? Is that even viable? I think I've kind of answered that in a weird way throughout this video. I think you need to find a market or a niche, and it's out there. You've just got to know what it is you want. And for me personally, my demographic, all of this, my market has come from the fact that it kind of doesn't really exist, and it's something that I'm deeply passionate about. So, I love visual arts. I'm terrible at visual arts, by the way. I can barely draw a stick man, basically, but I adore going to an art gallery and appreciating other people's art, because to me it's this magical talent that I could never even aspire to gain. Clearly music I'm very passionate about. It's kind of my thing. So for me to merge those two together is a big deal. It's something I'm hugely passionate about. So I think finding my market for me is quite easy, because it's me. I am my market, and so I just need to find some people like me, I guess, and they'll appreciate it too. So I think it's absolutely viable, but it needs to be something you're passionate about, because otherwise, what are you doing it for? So yeah, there we go. Stay safe, everyone, and have a great weekend and week. Thank you very much. You too. Torched Beats, crazy, high five. All right, Dom, I'll bite. How does one submit a track to your record label, and what genres are you looking for? Congrats on 100. Thank you very much. Very good question. You will see on the contact page, I've put in the email address, demos@5302.co.uk. That is the official email address. I, again, have a few people working behind that. The plan is to respond to all music within 14 days. I think I've made it clear on the website, if you don't hear back from us within 14 days, assume that to be a no. because that's one of the other things that I know a lot of people get frustrated with record labels not replying, and you kind of go, well, did you even hear it? Did you listen to it? Did you get the email? Did it go straight to spam? Am I pestering you? You know, it's a tricky situation. And something I will say up front is that I'm being quite cautious with this as well, because I know from experience that this email address is going to get hammered soon enough, and that is subject to change. So I think I've put in an autoresponder, and I'm sticking by this. If you're in a rock band and you're sending us a rock demo, you will get blacklisted, basically. That's how I'm dealing with it, because if you are sending dubstep, heavy bro step, then you will get blacklisted. I think that's the only way I can deal with it properly, and I think that's fair. That's the only way I can be fair to people like you, the viewers of these videos, who understand where I'm coming from and what I'm doing and what the whole concept is. I know from experience of working with other record labels that, and in fact running my studio as well, the number of emails I get on the studio website where it'll be a rock band who wants to come to my studio to record their album, and I'm like, I'm not a live room studio. It's clearly stated on the website, but that people don't read it. So, but unfortunately, that then detracts from genuine people. So to answer in terms of what genre, again, I'm being quite careful in being somewhat open. So I'm looking for, and I think if you listen to the Spotify playlist, you'll get a better idea. But I am looking for something that doesn't quite sit anywhere else. We're talking electronica that makes you kind of question your place in the universe. Something like a nice cinematic melody, a thoughtful melody. I don't really care about BPM. Could be 60, could be 160. BPM is not my main concern, so long as it fits in with the ethos of the label. So I'm kind of hesitant to use the word techno, because it's not really techno, but I suppose it's kind of a merging between electronica and techno, I suppose. It's kind of difficult to explain, but like I say, if you check out the playlist, it's on the front page of the website. You can play it from there. You kind of can't go wrong with where I'm at just by listening to that. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Just something that's a little bit different, a little bit left of field, basically, just a little bit off kilter. One thing I will say though is I'm not looking to sign singles. I don't see the point in a 1 or 2 track release. I'm looking at minimum 3 track EPs, preferably 5. Great to be 7, or hey, an album. I think the more the merrier. If it's a good body of work, then it's a good body of work. So yeah, hopefully that helps. But yeah, again, if you want formats, I'm fine with SoundCloud, but please make it downloadable, because sometimes I just want to sit on it and just double check the next day, and I don't want to be looking for links. I'd rather stick it in a folder. Otherwise, I like Dropbox links. I would say WeTransfer, but they're only active for like 7 days. So I would stick to Dropbox or SoundCloud, but make it downloadable. There we go. So hopefully that helps. Bill Carroll, thank you for keeping these AMAs going. A few questions for you. Have we got okay on time? Yeah, I can do a couple before I have to reset the camera again. 1, have you used Bitwig for scoring video or soundtracks? If so, what has your experience been? So I have... Bitwig doesn't officially support video yet. So to that extent, I haven't officially scored a video. However, I have written to moving image, which is basically scoring to video. using, I forget the name of the plugin actually, I'll see if I can find it in a second, but there is a plugin that is available, and it basically allows you to run video inside the plugin, and then you can start scoring to it. That's been the only way, unless one of the newer versions has made Bitwig video compatible, and I've not noticed, but I haven't tried recently. Where is it? Oh, do you know what? I haven't got it on this computer actually, because I've changed my computer recently, haven't I? So that's stupid, pointless looking. I'll find out if I can, but there is a plugin that basically takes video and spits out a video feed in the plugin so that you can actually score to it. So there we go. Question number 2, do you make use of MPE in Bitwig? What's MPE? So no, I don't know. MPE? Don't even know what that stands for. I've just not heard that acronym. If so, how? I don't know. 3, how do you get the best CPU and general DAW performance out of Bitwig? Crazy, high five. So that's kind of a tricky one when it comes to CPU, because a lot of it when it comes to computing, it's not just about CPU, it's about GPU as well as CPU, and also the deeper level things within a CPU as well. So there's a lot to consider in that. In terms of how to get the best performance, if I'm totally honest, I've not really ever had major issues with Bitwig. I know some people have, and I don't know what factor changes that, but I don't know if I've just been lucky. But even with my super old 10-year-old Mac Pro, I never really struggled with Bitwig. Yeah, there was a load of latency, but that was never really an issue. I'm an electronic producer. I'm not playing everything in real time. So that was never an issue. There'd be the odd plugin or the odd preset on the odd plugin that would be really CPU intensive, and in which case I'd just freeze that track or bounce it down and then deactivate the plugin, just so that if I need to come back to it at a later date, I can. And yeah, that was never really an issue, and that would happen once in a blue moon. So if I'm totally honest, I've never looked into how to get the best CPU performance out of Bitwig, because I've never really had that problem. And now I'm on this iMac 2017 iMac. You know, it's clearly better than my 10-year-old Mac Pro. So I just don't have that issue. I've not needed it, and you know, I can stack up 50 tracks of VSTs, and it doesn't seem to be suffering, to be honest. So there we go. I'm guessing that doesn't help, but feel free to ask more. Not Your Human again. Also, it's crazy that you're making a record label. High five again. St. Nicholas, congratulations on 100 AMAs. Thank you very much. And FanFan87, Salut Dom, 100 AMAs. That's crazy. Assuming you are looking for label questions, then here are mine. I am just going to reset the camera before it resets itself, though. And I'm back. Will you release exclusively as Dom Caine, or do you have plans with different aliases? Interesting question. I won't be releasing exclusively as Dom Caine, because I have been looking at setting up a duo with a friend of mine who I will leave unnamed for now, because we've got the name of the duo as well and everything's all fine there, but we haven't really nailed the music yet, and we're sort of still testing the water on seeing what works and what doesn't work, and with a kind of view to potentially putting something out on 5302, but we'll see. So I'm not looking at just exclusively being Dom Caine for it, but I think for the most part, I think I'd sort of carry on as I am, to be honest. Yeah, I don't feel the need. I feel like the whole Dom Caine thing. It's always weird saying my name, but it's my name. But the musician Dom Caine, the producer, the artist name Dom Caine, I think is kind of heading down this route and has been for years. I think if you follow my musical history, in fact, someone asked me on Twitter the other day, I don't know if you're a viewer of this video, but asked me why was there suddenly a lot of my old music missing from Apple Music, and I didn't fully explain, but one of the reasons for that is because using my real name as my artist name, there's a lot of stuff that I've done that I'm not saying I'm not proud of, but they just don't fit with where I'm going today. So I've actually taken down a lot of my old music from a lot of the stores, mostly because it's just congesting systems, and I kind of feel like it's a bit of a spring clean. And I think over the last, how long have I been releasing on Mousetrap? 6 years. I think definitely over the last 6 years, my music has sort of changed over those 6 years. And before those 6 years, it was very different. So, yeah, I kind of feel like I need the Dom Caine thing to stick with me and where I'm going, because it's also my real name, which is the downside of using your real name as your artist name, is that, you know, when you then move direction, it's not like you can just come up with a new name again, because it's your name. So yeah, there we go. You said you're looking for music to listen rather than dance, but why did I dance on your recent mixes containing album stuff? That's a very good question. So I hope that people do dance to my music, and I hope that people dance to all of the 5302 stuff. And I love the fact that you danced to my recent mix. I'm assuming this is the Evermix mix that I did. There'll be a link below. Yeah, so I'm glad that you did dance. I'm glad that it made you want to dance. And I hope that that's always the case for a lot of people. I just think that I try to sort of describe my music as not stuff you definitely just get up and dance to, because I think you're a minority there in dancing to my music. I think, but I don't know. Are you looking for experimental IDM music, or do you accept cool 4 on the floor, not a banger tracks like the drafts on your mix? I will accept anything along those lines. So I'm not looking for experimental IDM. I mean, I hate to use the word IDM because I only ever hear it mentioned when people are talking about things like Aphex Twin. And I'll let you into a little secret. I'm not a huge fan of Aphex Twin. I'm not into that experimental stuff where it's maybe outside the realms of what I would call music. And I think, you know, things like Aphex Twin and Square Pusher and stuff like that, I think, to me, it kind of loses its roots and loses where it came from. And I'm have been and always will be a huge fan of a good melody. I need a good melody. So I need, so I you know, I wouldn't say it ever, I wouldn't ever describe any of the music as being experimental, because I don't think it's experimental. I think it's carefully planned and carefully curated and anything but experimental. So hopefully that helps. As for 4 on the floor, I mean, look, if it's got all the other parts in there, if it's got a decent melody that makes you just feel something, that makes you think about something, then I have no problem with there being a 4 on the floor kick drum. But I wouldn't want it to be just a big banger, basically, which is, as you've said, not a banger. So yeah, so I'd be cool with that. Like the drafts in my mix, the drafts, so are we talking about the lots of IDs in a row? I would say that those lots of IDs in a row would be the absolute far edge of where I'm willing to go. I think And for me personally, if I make a track, like, let's talk about some of my Mousetrap tracks, you know, whether it be like Running Out or Borg or Psychoschematics or Topology or Structures, Stoic, pretty much all of my Mousetrap releases, they wouldn't get signed to 5302. Yeah, I think maybe at a push, there was a B-side to Stoic. I did Downforce. Maybe that at a push, but yeah. So I'm kind of separating. You know, the Mousetrap stuff is Mousetrap stuff. 5302 stuff is 5302 stuff, and they're two very different things. So hopefully that helps. Have a great release. Cheers. And that, my friends, is it. I think I've probably covered everything I need to cover, at least in terms of getting it launched. So there is a Facebook page, there is a Twitter account, there is an Instagram account, there is a website, there is a mailing list. Yeah, please do get involved with all of these things. I'll drop a link to a link tree below, so everything's all there on one page. Yeah, please do get involved. At the moment, at the time of me filming this video now, there are 0 Twitter followers, 0 Facebook likes, 0 everything. This is absolutely brand new. And yeah, hopefully it'll be a little bit more than 0 by the time my album comes out in September. Who knows? But yeah, please do keep your questions coming. Next week we are at episode 101. Yeah, so I guess back to normal. Please do ask me more stuff about 5302 if you want. Yeah, otherwise we're kind of back to normal AMAs-ish. Yeah, I think that's it. Again, thank you to everyone who's watched this video in particular, but everyone who's watched all the other videos, and especially if you have watched all of the other videos, you've probably got more patience than me. Yeah, so to prove that you have made it this far into the video, I don't even need to look for a keyword. I want the keyword to be 5302. So please comment the word 5 or the number 5302, and I will give you a high five next week. See you then. Cheers.